because they only want to correspond with me in Portuguese, and they only want me to fill out all their request paperwork in Portuguese. And so I was like, okay, that's not going to work. So I've had trouble with English, but with Portuguese. So.
All right. I think I got the first question. Is can you speak to compassionate use and humanitarian exemptions importation of non-registered pharmaceutical in Brazil for biologics? Yeah, there are ways that you can get into compassionate use, and that usually is initiated by an investigator, right? So if you have a product, for example, we talked initially outside, should you find physicians that are willing and would like to use your biologics, in this case here, they can initiate the conversation with you, then a local player will facilitate this import for you. And you can get that, but you've got to have the facilitator in Brazil to get your drug into imports. All right, so it is possible. There are several studies and several compassionate use in Brazil, and that, like I said, initiated by investigator. So you can reach out to investigator, like we talked previously, and say, hey, I understand you are in this field. We have this product, and we would be willing to make accommodations for you to use as a compassionate study. So then they will initiate a email or a letter to you, and then a local player through with his physician will reach out to the local visa, and that will go up, and you can get imported into Brazil. Did I answer the question? Yep. Yeah, why don't you go?
Okay. Thanks. All right, so the question is, what happens when you've chosen the wrong partner or manufacturer? That is the big question. That's what we try to avoid, obviously. And as a small company, have you ever faced a situation, even with due diligence? And yeah, actually, one of our currently approved suppliers, now granted this is a starting material manufacturer, and they're located in China, and these guys are really, really good at you bringing them 5 mgs of a material that you made in the laboratory and saying, can you make me 500 mgs? Can you make me 5 grams? We asked them, can you make us 5 kilos of this? Oh, and by the way, can you do this repeatedly, batch after batch after batch? Now, typically starting materials, and through our applications with the FDA, we found out that this was going to be an acceptable process. However, when we filed in Europe, we anticipated that because none of our starting materials are commercially available, and because they're all part of very specifically described on how you manufacture them to get the quality and the quality attributes that we need in them, when we filed in Europe for our MAA filing, they came back and said, for one of the materials, that's a late stage add, so it's the last component in the second to last step of the synthesis process, and it adds a significant portion of the structure of the molecule. The EMA came back and said, we think your GMP needs to start earlier for that material. Now, fortunately, we anticipated this company simply can't do that. They can't do GMP. These are a lot of really, really smart people that can't spell GMP. They don't want to spell GMP. It's not what they do. We've kind of forced them into that arena. So we did, in this case, now it wasn't so much that we selected the wrong vendor, it's just they couldn't grow with us where we needed. So we actually had to go out and qualify a second supplier for the starting materials. Now granted, because China's not far enough away from California, the second one we qualified is in India. So, we want to make sure it was as far away from California as possible for me. But if you get into a situation, and I've not had this, well, we have had to disqualify some suppliers, even as small companies. Never ones that are doing commercial manufacturing. We have had kill some contracts with some GLP laboratories that we couldn't depend on the quality of the data coming out for some of the animal modeling work that we had to do. And we had the risk of it compromising our files. So there were some times that we had to remove suppliers for those reasons. Fortunately, I've never had to be forced to make a shift on a manufacturing operation. But if you do, I mentioned the supplier that we brought along where we were their first contract customer. I will tell you that our technical people, our management, gave them an apartment for 9 months in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so that they could be close by on a regular basis to help make sure that everything went well. And me and my team that are responsible for the CMC part of manufacturing and for product development were in constant contact. We met 2 and 3 times a week to discuss the ongoing issues. We helped them modify their quality system so they could accommodate a customer. Of course, they charged us for it at the back end for those new systems and processes that we helped them put in place to make their systems function better. We paid for it, but we've never had to. But if you get in that situation where a supplier simply can't deliver on the quality, you're faced with a very hard decision. And if it's impacting the quality of your product and it's putting your patients at risk, I don't know that there's a decision other than to start looking for a second supplier. And you all know that that's not a trivial decision to make because there's regulatory implications. There's how do we transition from one supplier to another? You don't necessarily always want to tell that supplier that you're introducing a new supplier until it's done because they may be able to read the writing on the wall. And every company, again, is going to be different. A big company with deep pockets is going to handle it different. As a small company, understanding who we're partnering with up front is absolutely essential. And I've been fortunate to have some absolutely outstanding partners, manufacturing partners. I've been very successful, and the companies I've worked with have been successful because of that. But if you're faced with that situation, you got to sit down and look at what's the risk to your organization, because if they fail you, at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have your name on the end of the recall. You're going to have the one that's going to be interacting with the various agencies on what are you doing? Where was your oversight of that supplier? Why did you let it go this long that you let bad product out in the industry? It's your company's reputation. And oftentimes, it's my personal, professional reputation that goes into allowing that product to go out into the market if I know that it's substandard because this supplier is not doing their job. Now, if they're just a paying supplier to deal with, maybe you got to babysit them. Maybe you got to put up with it. I mean, we all have worked with, very exceptionally skillful people in delivering on things, but they're a royal pain to work with. If that's your situation, maybe you just deal with it. But if they're putting bad product out, they're putting your patients at risk, and I do mean your patients and your customers at risk, then you got to make that hard decision of how do you get away from them. So, no, it's not an easy answer, but the best I can give you.
I have another question here. It says, does Brazil and Visa encourage electronic submission? What is the preferred method for submission? The preferred method for submission is electronic. You should submit electronic. Thank you. Yep. You should submit it electronically. Your dossier. Michael has been experienced that. It is all the official communication will be done in Portuguese. So they are making sure they want to make sure what they're communicating is what they really want to communicate. So no, they don't want to risk in another language answering you. And that's where again you get to have somebody on the ground that facilitate what they really mean. And so all the back and forth official communication from Visa will be done in Portuguese. Your dossier can be submitted in English. All technical paper, all technical work is acceptable, submitted in English, but all the forms and all the communications will be done in Portuguese, and the preferred form of communication, it is electronically. All right?
All right, any more? All right, great. So we will take a break. We will reconvene then at 10:30. So thanks so much.